Cyber Guru is my brand under which I do this kind of awareness sessions for school and college kids as well as for senior citizens. So all my cyber awareness, I do it under this brand. So today's scheme will be like we will talk about our connected world, privacy and reputation, what exactly it matters when we are talking about online privacy and how we can maintain our reputation and all those things. Indicators of compromise. I get a lot of questions about how do we know that our devices are compromised. So I will talk about indicators of compromise. Cyber crime and mobile. So mobile in today's world, like how the cyber crime is taking a form of a mobile based vector into an attack or maybe a compromise. So I will talk about that. Social networking dangers, because all of us are on social media, different social media, irrespective of the age groups. So social networking dangers. Securing home networks may not be relevant, but we would just briefly go through that as well. Passwords and email security. Passwords, whether you love it or not, you can't expect a world without passwords. There are options. That's the way in which the world is moving. Ransomware and consumer scams. Consumer scams may not be relevant, so we can skip that, but we will definitely talk about ransomware. Cyberbullying, it is another key component for any students, like whether in school or college, or even adults as well. So cyberbullying is one of those important areas, and then we will wind up with an interactive Q&A at the end of the session. So this is the scheme. And as I mentioned, that's my brand. Cyber Guru is the brand. So our connected world. So in today's world, like all of these devices help us to get connected to internet, whether it is a refrigerator, whether it is a smartphone, whether it is a gaming console, whether it is an automobile like a car and kind of stuff like that. All of these things are definitely helping us to get connected to internet. Internet is nothing but the cyberspace. Cyberspace is an interconnection of all the computers across the globe, and all these devices help us connect to the internet. Refrigerators and cars are the newest addition to the things which gets us connect to internet. We call it as Internet of Things. The lights in each of the rooms are also getting connected to internet as well. So we can control all these devices with our smartphones or with our computers and all those things. So all these things are the newer category of devices which are known as Internet of Things. And some of the applications, like I've taken some examples, like some of them are you should be cautious. Like Kik, for example, is a messenger app which is mainly used by people who are targeting kids. When I say kids, anyone under the age of 18 would be a target for that. So be careful with those kind of apps as well. May not be relevant, like you may not see that in your country of residence, but these kind of apps are definitely used by people who are targeting underage kids under the age of 18. So be careful with that. So these are some of the apps which are being, I just taken some example of some of the apps which help us get connected to internet as well. Now let's see what is the impact of privacy and reputation. So when we talk about privacy, this is one of those key concern areas. So when we talk about privacy and reputation, like what is a personal data? So when we interact with the people online, so online world or cyberspace, something what we all should keep in mind is that it is an unknown territory. You don't know the person who is going to interact with you in that cyberspace, because online is famous for anonymity. You can keep your anonymity, you can disclose your identity, and all those things are possible. So you have to keep in mind that a personally identifiable information, or PII, is dealing with information like your name, your home address, your school address, your national ID card number, your passport number, if you have a driving license, or any of those related things. So personal data on its own, it does not have any impact, because people may not be able to find out who you are, or cannot pinpoint this is the same person as this with only a name. Because take any example of any name, like maybe use an example of Pradeep. There might be many people with the name Pradeep in different countries, but Pradeep, who is residing in so and so address with this national ID number and all those things, could be only one person. So the more parameters, what you see on the right, the personal data, then it becomes an identifiable information. So you should be very cautious in sharing your personal data to a stranger, because in Western world, the school kids are trained for identifying stranger danger. Like when you walk on the street, you are walking back from your bus stop to your house, and if someone who is a stranger comes towards you and asks a specific question, it should be treated as a stranger danger. Don't even enter into a conversation with that person, because that is how kids are being created. Kids are being made sure that there is an awareness created among the kids community from schools, that a stranger danger is always a key component. So you should not end up in a problem. So you should always try to avoid that situation. So a stranger danger online, you have to be keeping in mind that you are interacting with strangers online. So what you reveal, because it's the same world, like a person who is 55 can pretend to be 12, 13, 14, and a kid who is 12 can pretend to be 26 online. So you have to be very cautious about whom you are interacting with, what all information you are sharing with, because personal data is coming under the privacy information. So the privacy about your identity, how much you should reveal about that, is also of a key component of that. Another thing is, like, you can see, I have taken two examples. So you see on the top, you can see two girls, a girl showing a victory sign. So actually, that girl was being in the background. So she ended up in a picture where she was not knowing that she would be ending up in a picture, but that picture was used on the right side. So the person actually posted that picture without her permission on an online photo sharing website. In this case, it was Flickr. And then the person, you can see that it ended up in an advertisement campaign, using her picture in some other place without her permission or awareness that it is being used. And the second example was a family who was on a vacation. They didn't post the picture online, but they shared with their grandparents. So the grandparents got this picture, and they were part of a group. And in that group, there were people who were not known to them. So one of the person actually took that picture and then shared it on social media, and it was used by someone else on an advertisement campaign in a different country. So these are some good examples, but all of us know that it could be turning up pretty much worse than this, because these are nice examples, but there are not so nice examples which your photos could end up in an advertisement campaign. So you have to be careful what pictures you are posting, with whom you are sharing, because the moment that picture or any document which leaves your phone or which leaves your device, computer, tablet, whatever it is out of your control. So you have to be very careful about what you do. So some of the indicators, like people ask me, like, how do we know that our systems are infected? When I say system, it could be your smartphone, it could be your tablet, it could be your computers. So some of those key indicators are like, if it is infected, if there is a malware is nothing but a piece of software which has a malicious intent. When I say a malicious intent, this could be used for finding out more information about you, about your system, about where the system is located, what all information the system has. So all this information can be used. So malware infection or a botnet infection will make the computer processing slow. Botnets are nothing but infections on your system, which makes it part of a global network. A global network means your computer could be made part of a network of computers, which could be used for attacks, cyber attacks. When I say cyber attacks, it could be used for targeting any specific organization, any specific school as well. We had some examples where a botnet was used for bringing down a school network just because one of the students wanted the grade not to be published online. So you know what all it could happen. So there will be delays in opening applications and random opening of multiple web pages on browser to suspicious looking websites. Suspicious looking websites could be, hey, we found out that your computer is infected. Do you want us to clean? Please click here and then we will clean it. So never fall into those kind of traps. So these are some of those key examples of that. And if your system is infected, uh, and if your email is open, your some of your critical access applications are open, then they might get information about your email address, and then you start to receive a lot of junk emails on your email accounts. All the email accounts which you are trying to access from your computer, those would be compromised. When I say compromised, those email address would be made public, and then it goes into a database, and then people start sending a lot of spam or junk emails into that, and then that is one of those indications. And as I mentioned, the last point is you will start getting a lot of pop-ups saying that we can fix your computer for infections, it is running slow and all those things. So don't fall into those kind of traps. Always use caution when you are getting these kind of alerts, messages, or emails, pop-ups and stuff like that. The basic thing is apply common sense, which is not so common. So cybercrime and mobile, like when we say mobile, like all of us play different games, mobile games and stuff like that. So what happens behind the scenes when you're playing a game on a smartphone? So behind the scenes, your scores, your username, your email address, your previous scores, location, how much time you have spent, your IP address, your gender, your location, your Facebook friend list or other social media which is getting linked with this email address. So all these things are actually getting shared behind the scenes. You can control to some extent how much information you want it to be shared with the game or with the application or with the app. You have the right to control those kind of things. But certain applications won't have, like for example, like a game is requesting for access to your contacts. So the standard approach is like, okay, let us give access, because without giving access, the game won't even initiate. So the game needs access to the contact list. But if we question, like, why does the game need access to the contact list? It doesn't, because if it is asking for that, then they are taking all this information from your device and it is being sent to a server, which is somewhere in the world, and use that for profiling you as a player. And all these things are actually linking back to the amount which will be spent on in-app purchases. Like you are playing a game, you are downloading a game, you are installing it, and then you are playing that game. Ultimate objective is like, are you spending more money in getting more coins or more gift, which can be used in the next levels and stuff like that in that specific game? That is the objective, because nobody gives free games. Because all these games are definitely looking at getting more money, which is more revenue. So it is definitely leading into that. So don't fall into all these things. So when you are actually signing up for a game, there are a lot of terms and conditions. I would highly recommend you read through that and then give only the basic permissions for accessing information on your smartphones or smart devices. So some of the top 10 mobile tips are like, the tip number one goes without saying, is like, you should always set a password and lock it when not in use. And the password should be having a timeout, which should be the bare minimum or the shortest time period for locking your device. Let's say you put a passcode, or you put a password for accessing your phone or unlocking your phone, and you put the timer for 30 minutes. It is not going to help. Even 10 minutes, it's not going to help. Imagine you are in a location, maybe in a school, in the class, you just leave it on your desk and go out to the washroom, restroom break, and then you come back. Within that 10 minutes, anyone could have access to your smartphone. So you should always keep those things in mind. And geotagging or location awareness is another key thing when you take pictures. Nowadays, people don't carry cameras unless they need it for some professional purpose or they are serious about photography, because most of the phone cameras in today's world are with high resolution and stuff like that. So this could be used for location awareness or location tagging. So this geotagging can actually be used for finding out a person's movement, like where this picture was taken, what time it was taken, and you can actually find out this person's daily routine using photos which they post online without turning off the geotagging, and they can clearly find out where this person would be or where this person was at that specific time, which is not so great, right? Like nobody wants people to be tracking them, whether it is kids, whether it is adults, whether it is seniors. Nobody wants people to be tracking them using devices where they are and all those things. Your family tracking you is slightly different, because parents may be interested in knowing whether the kids are reaching home at the right time or not and all those things. So that is separate. But you have to keep those things in mind. So always install a security software on your smartphones, because that becomes the first level of defense for that. And geotagging, like these two are visual differentiators. Like there might be some landmarks in your city. I don't know about your city, but in Salala, there might be different. In Muscat, there will be totally different landmarks. In your city, it would be totally different kind of landmarks. But imagine a picture taken. The picture taken on the left is just a tree, but it had the GPS information or the location information. And the picture taken on the right didn't have a GPS information, but it's a well-known landmark in one of the countries. So this will make totally different. So even if a naked eye cannot make a differentiation between a picture and where it was taken, there are different mechanisms. If it has the location information, we call it as tag, or we call it as the metadata within inside or EXIF information with all these pictures can create a problem. So you have to be careful about what kind of information you are sharing with the picture, because the picture may not have information, but it has the technical information embedded within the file. So you have to be very careful with that. Social networking dangers, like if you are on social networks, you will keep getting requests, you will send requests and all those things, but you have to keep in mind that never accept a request from people whom you don't know. Even though you might see that there are a lot of common connections, it's a common misconception that if you have more common connections, then that person might be known. Need not be, because all common connections might be thinking or might think similarly, saying that someone else would have checked whether they know this person, whether it's a real person or not. So you have to keep those things in mind when you're actually accepting connections or sending requests as well, because we never know who this person is. Like, as I mentioned, like anonymity is a big thing online. So you have to be very careful about the social networking and the dangers which can be associated with that. So I'm just using one of those examples. Like all the social media applications will have their own privacy settings, but people don't spend much time analyzing what are the security and privacy settings. So you have the options to set the privacy, what you should be having, and you don't need somebody. None of these platforms give all the features turned on by default. So it is up to the individual to decide what kind of security and privacy settings what you should do. But you have all these options. I just use one of those examples, but almost all social media apps will have their own privacy settings. If some of the privacy settings are not available, then the recommendation is that stay away from that social media platform till they fix it, or read reviews about that specific social media privacy issues before even you sign up for that. Yeah, so yeah, that is done. And then securing home networks is not a 2 or 3 key things. One thing is, the most important thing is, if you have a wireless router, which all of us have at our homes, always change the SSID or your wireless network name at home, and change the preset password of your wireless router. These are some basic things, because if the service provider is giving you with a specific account number or your home number and then some random characters, anyone could get use the default password to get connected and get access to your network, and then use your network for accessing internet, which could be a problem. because if they do something against a specific network, it would be traced back to your network and you will be held accountable or responsible for that, because it came from your IP. So you have to be very careful with passwords and setting up this home networks and all those things. So you have to be very careful with that. Passwords and email security, as I mentioned, like passwords are an integral component of everything which we do online, starting from doing bank or accessing some specific classroom materials and stuff like that. There is username, password needed for accessing all these things. We might have in future a passwordless future where we will be using something totally different. I'm not going into the details, but we might be getting out of this password based or random character based and all those things, but everything will link back to the different factors of authentication, like who you are, what you know, and what you are kind of thing. So all these things are different things like biometric and all those things. But this is some of those examples, like most popular passwords which are used in North America. Okay, so in your, like in Middle East, it might be slightly different, but most people tend to use some of these popular passwords. But the problem with this popular passwords or this passwords which you can remember is that if you can remember the password, it is easy to remember, then it might be easy for others to guess your password. So you have to be careful with that. And some of the tips for passwords is that for each account, you should have a unique password. So each account should have unique. Don't never use same password across all your accounts. It is like you have 3 or 4 different houses and you have one key to enter into all these houses and you lose the key. So you have to be very clear about what kind of passwords which you use in specific set of accounts. Never use dictionary words or easy words like password 123 or admin 123 or QWERTY and those kind of things. Don't use your pets' names. Don't use your school name. Don't use your parents or grandparents' name and all, or your home place in India. So don't use those kind of things. And focus on most important accounts like email and social networks. Email, because you might be using email as a login into many different sites. So if you forget access to a site and then you have to reset the password reset link will be sent to your registered email address. So if your email account itself is compromised with a weak password, so anyone can reset the password and they will have access to your reset password, and then you tend to lose that account. So you have to be very careful with that. And some of the questions what I get is like, how do I keep a password? So the best approach is like you can create a passphrase. Passphrase is something like a sentence. So you have different words in this example. You can read through the example. So you can use those examples and use the words or the letters or the alphabets in those sentences as highlighted in green, and then you can create your own password. So create a passphrase, which is a sentence, and then you can construct your own password and do that. Or another approach is like use an industry specific or an industry standard password manager, and then use that for that. But you should always keep in mind that when you are using a password manager, you should use it has a default, a master password. That master password should be complex. So you have to keep those things in mind. Ransomware, consumer scams, I will just skip through this and this one. So you will be getting a lot of emails. So some of those things are phishing emails. So phishing emails are nothing but with some links which is going to ask you to click on that link to reset your password. But if you are not sure from where this email originated, don't click on this link, because if you click on those links, you will be taken to a website which might be looking similar to the real or a genuine website, but it will be set up only for capturing information which can be used for profiling people, or then like understand their passwords and then use their passwords to log into the real website. So phishing scams have always been there in the past 20 years. So it is going to be there even in future as well, because there are different kinds of techniques. Like you might get an email saying that a Nigerian king is dead and he has millions of dollars which needs to be given to people who are related to them. Click on that link or send your bank details and all those things. So don't fall victim to that. People still fall victim to that. That is something which is really interesting. And if you're driving, like let's say you're driving a bike, or where you're riding a bike, or you're riding a car and all those things, what kind of stickers you actually put. Some countries have restrictions in stickers being put onto cars or motorcycles or bikes as well. So, but or even in your backpack. So your backpack, you might be putting more stickers, but you might be advertising like from where the sticker came from and how you are associated with that. So be careful with all this information when you're out in public. Number port scam, this is not relevant for this audience, so I'm just skipping this. Now let's see cyberbullying. So cyberbullying, in some countries, it is reported. And the kids actually say that or give a feedback that yes, they are being made like they are on the receiving end of on a cyberbullying attempt. So what all things which actually goes on with that? So cyberbullying is nothing but bullying using electronic communication. One of the key headaches with that is it could be anonymous because of the same thing which I mentioned some time back, because our online activities can be made as anonymous. And cyberbullying could be friends as well. There are different categories of cyberbullying. So like it could be frapping is one of those examples for cyberbullying, dissing, hissing, and there are different cyberbullying categories for that. It could be friends. It could be friends as well because they know your details. I'm not saying that suspect your friends. That is not what. But this is some of those classic patterns of cyberbullying. It could be coming from friends as well. And the effects does not stop after the harassment stops. So it is definitely dealing with the psychological aspects with that. So some of the key things when cyberbullying happens is that never respond. Never respond for any kind of cyberbullying or cyber threats which you might get. There are different forms of cyberbullying. It could happen through emails, or it could be blogging websites, social media, chats, chat groups, and all those things. So key thing is never respond to any kind of attacks online, and always report, talk to your parents, talk to your teachers, and then report to the website, internet service provider, school, and ask for any kind of plan of action. So make sure that you don't respond. Keep all the proof and use that in your complaint when you're complaining against any kind of cyberbullying attempt. Yep, and with that, I will take a pause here, stop sharing, and we will get into an interactive Q&A, and I will open it up for the questions.
Good evening, sir. My name is Pradeep. Sir, in WhatsApp, I have seen that they write that messages are encrypted. Whatever messages we send to WhatsApp are encrypted. What does that mean actually? They say they are very highly secured when you are, it is written like encrypted. What does that actually mean? Is really that much safe enough to send messages when you say it's encrypted?
Okay, so WhatsApp uses a technology called end-to-end encryption. So encryption is mainly dealing with the confidentiality, the integrity part, and non-repudiation. So these are terminologies which I will simplify. Confidentiality means, let's say Pradeep is trying to send a message to me. No one else can actually read it. So that means only Pradeep and myself can read that. So that ensures the confidentiality part of that message. So that is the confidentiality part. Integrity part means that the message what Pradeep sends cannot be altered in the entire process of coming from Pradeep to myself, so that integrity is maintained. So that is the integrity part. Non-repudiation is that the sender cannot say that I did not send it because it came from your number, it came from your device. So I can always prove that you send me that message. So that deals with the non-repudiation. So these are the three components of encryption. In the case of WhatsApp, it is an end-to-end encryption. End-to-end encryption means you use a key. So encryption happens with software keys. So there are two sets of keys which all of us will be using for that app, a specific app. So we will have a public key and we will have a private key. So you will encrypt. When I say you, the application will encrypt using your private key, and send it to me. I will use your public key to decrypt it. So that is the difference between encryption and non-encryption. And encryption, the text is ciphertext. When I say ciphertext, let's say you are sending me a message, hello, how are you? That is in clear text. So when you encrypt it, it becomes some random characters, and anyone who gets that ciphertext cannot find out what this message was, because it actually keeps it confidential. So when it keeps it confidential, only the person to whom you sent it and who was the intended recipient can actually read that message. So that is the basis of encryption. And end-to-end encryption is one of those WhatsApp features where like when you send it, it gets encrypted and it gets routed through the entire internet through servers and all those things. None of these devices which comes in between can actually read that message. So only I can read it. If you're sending a message to me and then I respond to that and all those things. So that end-to-end encryption is safe, it is secure, but keep one thing in mind, all these messaging platforms, all these social media platforms, however encryption and all those things which they are saying, don't use it for illegal purposes, don't use it for illegal activities or sending messages which are what I would say, which are not considered to be legal.
So there are two questions on chat. Question number 1 from Dr. Sujata. Is it safe to save our passwords in Google or Samsung accounts? Sometimes there's a prompt which asks us if the password should be saved.
Okay, the best practice approach is that don't use that for saving it, because this is like you have a bank locker and you actually leave your key with the bank itself. So don't use the same provider for doing multiple things. So if Google is doing your emails, don't use that for saving your passwords. So never save your passwords on browser. Don't do that. The second thing is always use always use a password manager, which actually saves passwords in encrypted form. So when I say passwords in encrypted form, let's say your password is password123. Just as an example, if the password manager is saving it as a clear text, which is password123, don't use that. Most of the standard password managers uses or saves passwords in an encrypted form, which is good, because only the password manager will have access to decrypt that key and decrypt your password and use it in any website. So anyone getting access to the password database cannot crack it because it is encrypted, so which is safe. But if the password database itself is in clear text, when I say clear text, just open your notepad in your computer and keep entering site name password, site name password, site name password, site name password. Anyone getting access to that file, your passwords are compromised. So keep that thing in mind. Same thing with browsers also. There are different ways and means in which it can be extracted. So don't save passwords in the browser or any of those accounts and other things. Always use two separate things. Like we can use the cars for driving, right? But we cannot use the cars to take a shower. So that is the basic thing. Don't use one thing for all purposes. Have specific things for different objectives, different purposes, different things. So there are specific set of tools which are available mainly for that.
Okay, a few questions, so we'll quickly move on. Subina is asking, what is VPN in cybersecurity? I'm adding, clubbing one more question from Navajit. What is the difference with a proxy and a VPN?
Okay, so VPN is actually known as virtual private network. So a virtual private network will make sure that your communication channel is encrypted. When I say it is encrypted, there will be a VPN server, there will be a VPN client. So you use the client to create a connection. When I say connection, you are creating a tunnel. So this tunnel is an encrypted tunnel from your client machine to the server. So when you get, so the whole transaction is encrypted, and the internet traffic from the server which goes on to the internet is encrypted. So that means no one can see what you're actually doing using a VPN. So VPN is mainly for that. So VPN is used for confidentiality purposes, so that service providers cannot find out what kind of sites you are browsing, to escape from specific country censorship. Like specific countries have restrictions for accessing specific websites. So those websites, if you want to access, then you have to use a VPN. Like one example, like you are next to UAE. So some of the UAE websites, if they're restricting, saying that only UAE people can access. When I say UAE people or people within, so the IP address should be originating from UAE for accessing those websites. But if you want to access, you actually use a VPN server which is hosted within UAE, and then you actually get a connection there, and then you get a UAE IP address, but you are still based in Oman, but you still access for all these things. So you can bypass this geographic boundary-based restrictions and all those things when you are accessing some specific information. So that is VPN. But VPN can also be used for many different purposes, which I don't advocate, but don't use VPN for illegal activities. So I will just mention that again and again. And second thing is that even if you are using VPN, law enforcement or police, if they want to find out who was using this VPN, at what time they got connected and all those things, they can get it from the VPN providers through proper channel. So VPN is not a license for doing anything what you want. So be careful with that. It's mainly used for having a secure connection. Like if you're doing banking and you don't want anyone to find out what kind of transactions you are doing, all those things, like VPN can be used. A proxy is slightly different. A proxy means that it will use caching for specific set of websites. Let's say you're trying to access from school. So most of the schools in North America use proxies because students may be using the same connection for accessing some common websites like Google, for example. So the proxy would actually cache this information. So next time when somebody is requesting that web page, it comes from the cache, not from the internet. So it reduces the internet traffic, but you get information and all those things. So proxy is mainly used for caching and all those things. So caching is nothing but holding a repository of information which is frequently requested from internet. So the connection won't even go to internet, but it will get from the local proxy itself.
Next one, Sangam, from Reshma Sheikh. To access YouTube account, we need to access with our email ID. How far it is safe?
Yeah, YouTube is owned by Google. So for accessing YouTube, you need to log in with your Google, because Google is the parent login. We call it as a federated identity. I won't go into the details, but the Google account is being used for accessing your YouTube as well. So it's the same thing, because one Google account, you have access to the G Suite, which is the Google Suite. I don't know about this school, but Dr. Srinivasan, is it like your school is using G Suite for the school?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So like in North America also, most of the school districts actually use Google Suite, like Google Classroom, Google Suite, and then like for Google Slides for presentation, or Google Docs and Google Sheets for Excel or worksheet based access and stuff like that. So it is like one login which will be used for multiple services. So similarly with Gmail also, like the Google account, you will have access to Gmail, you will have access to YouTube. So that is safe because they control the login. So that is safe. But if your password is weak, nothing is safe.
So next one from Rama. Logging out from email or Facebook after use, will that really protect us?
Okay, so it will protect from profiling. Okay, so after each use, if you are logging off from your email, is a best practice. Even from Facebook also, it is the best practice approach. When I say the best practice approach, in cyberspace, there is a concept called risk mitigation or risk reduction. So we cannot make risk as zero. That means if someone says you are 100% safe, don't trust that person, because it is not possible. So we are trying to minimize the risk. So when we say minimize the risk, that means we are taking a lot of precautions for reducing the risk. So when you're actually logging off, you are actually reducing the risk. Let's say you don't log off. If your system is infected, someone else is actually remotely seeing what actually you are doing in your system, then they see your email. Okay, they see your email, they can actually click and they can actually see the contacts which you saved in your email address. And this email address can be used for building up an email database, which can be sold for sending marketing material or sales related stuff or product promo, and those kind of stuff can be sent. So it's called targeted marketing. Now we have multiple topics coming into the discussion. So it's called targeted marketing. It is email database based approaches and all those things. So if you don't log off, there is a possibility, and if someone else is using the system and you forgot to log off, then they will have access to your email. So that is one thing. And social media accounts like Facebook, let's say you are using Facebook in a browser from your computer, and on one tab your Facebook is open, and on the second tab you are browsing some online retailer, like it could be I don't know, in Oman there is Amazon. Like if it is Amazon is there, then let's say you are browsing for a specific set of information, or it might be Amazon equivalent, any website you're trying to do some online shopping. And if those sites have an agreement with Facebook, or if that website has a Facebook icon, then that means that they will definitely try to share your information to your which can be mapped with your Facebook login. So the problem is these two, then you will start seeing a lot of ads coming in your Facebook feed, which is directly related with what you are searching for. So that's a key, that's a common thing, right? So in our phones, if we use Facebook as an example, they could be capturing all information, including what we speak and all those things. And then that can be used for updating our feeds with those kind of information. So people keep they keep wondering, like, I didn't search for it. We were like, both of us were just speaking at a coffee shop, and then now I see all those things in my feed. That explains to that. So you have to be careful with what you do. It's always a best practice to log off after each attempt, and then make sure that you access. So if you are using a specific browser for Facebook, use a different browser for your online shopping and other things.
So next one from Jenny Prakash. She has clubbed two questions in one. So if you are using public Wi-Fi like airport or shopping mall kind of Wi-Fi, is it safe to perform banking transactions using mobile app using this public Wi-Fi? The second part is it safe to perform a transaction using in private browsing option in Google Chrome or Edge using public Wi-Fi?
Okay, now we discussed about all these things, right? And I want someone from the audience to answer the first part of the question. So who has the real guts to take a stab at the response from the audience?
If it is in an unavoidable situation only, it is better to use these kind of public options like browsing from an airport, or if it is an unavoidable situation only, it is better to have such a banking transaction, as I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is really good, because when you're accessing from any public Wi-Fi, the problem is there might be many people connected to the same wireless access point. So you know it, like if there are so many people connected, anyone could be trying to see who is doing what kind of thing, like just for fun or from serious perspective. So it is not recommended to do that. But you have to keep one more thing in mind. When you're trying to access, let's say you're traveling in a bus, or whether you are traveling in a train, or you are in a mall, shopping mall, and you are using your data connection, not wireless, your data connection to access your banking. There is another component which is important, which is known as social engineering. So social engineering or shoulder surfing is another key component which you should try to avoid. A shoulder surfing is nothing but somebody trying behind you or around you, trying to see what you are doing. Because it's human mind, we are more inquisitive in what others are doing, not what we are doing. So we are more interested in finding out what someone else is doing. So you just try to peep across and then see what they are doing and kind of stuff like that. So even if you are using your data plan, and if you are trying to enter your username password in a public place, be careful. Be careful who you are around, or who is around you, and who might be watching you. You never know. So don't try to access, try to avoid, unless it is urgent and stuff like that. So also, I see a lot of instances where people give their credit card numbers over phone. They might be in a place where they're giving phone, the credit card number, their CVV number, their billing address, and all those things. So there is no medicine for human stupidity. So that is where the problem is. So as I mentioned, always use common sense, which is not so common. I think there was a second part to the question, right?
Is it safe to perform a transaction using in private browsing option in Google Chrome or Edge using public Wi-Fi?
Yeah, I would say no, because in private browsing means the browser is not going to store the history or cookies and all those things in your system. The transaction is still going to be through that network. So anyone can actually they can actually do a man in the middle kind of an attack and then try to find out, sniff what exactly is being done. So the best practice is to use a VPN software in public Wi-Fi. So public Wi-Fi, the best approach is use a VPN if VPN is permitted legally within your country.
So next one from Shreyas. There's a browser called Brave browser, which claims to be the safest browser. It also has an option of using Tor search engine. Is it safe to use it?
Is that a student who is asked the question?
Shreyas, where are you?
No, that's okay.
Yes.
So
he's a student only.
yeah, that's okay. So Tor, I would suggest you stay away from Tor, because Tor is part of the dark web. So I don't want people playing around with dark web. Understand the implications, because dark web, let's see iceberg, like how we saw in Titanic movie, right? You see only 10% outside. That is the internet. What you don't see, which is submerged under the water level, is the dark web. So dark web, lot of things happen. I don't need to emphasize what all happened there. Anything happens in dark web. So dark web, the access is actually using the Tor browser. So the Tor browser, I would recommend you stay away, because if you are accessing, then there might be consequences which might come out of that. So I won't recommend. So that is one thing. Brave browser is actually a good browser. So in browser, Brave won't actually track you, but rest of the browsers would definitely have tracking information. So Brave is one of those good browsers where they don't track. There are different browsers like Brave. So normally I don't use any commercially available names, but there are different options. You can search for it and you can actually use that.
So Mega is asking, in many websites, they ask to enable cookies. Can accepting cookies affect our security?
Accepting cookie is not going to compromise your system, because cookies are mainly used for identifying a specific system from where the access is happening, like the server and the client, from where this connection is actually going. So it is here on the system where the cookies are being used. So there is a good article on, there is a good video, short video in YouTube. You can search for it about cookies, which talks about all those things. So with all this cookie accepting options, there are different options: reject all cookies, accept only required cookies, or accept all cookies. So accept required cookies, but click on that and see what are the cookies which gets enabled, how much information they are using that for tracking and all those things. And if still they say enable all cookies, be cautious and what exactly you are doing in those websites.
A question from Kartikeya Avasti. I hope the pronunciation is right. How can someone differentiate between fake and real website? Because last year I got a mail in which the initials were http://xyz.com, but in reality it was https://xyz.com.
Okay, so the website genuinity, you can search using many different options within. So there are different search engines which can be used for finding out whether this website is genuine or not. So as a standard, most of the websites in today's world are SSL. So SSL is starting with HTTPS. So you can click on the lock icon on the browser and just to the left of the website address, and see the details like the certificate is valid, to whom it was assigned, who is the certificate authority for that, because there are different certificate like Tharte, like VeriSign, and there are different certificate authorities which are actually creating this certs which are getting assigned for different websites. So you can definitely check that before you start with your transaction. So check that and then continue with your transaction.
Good evening, sir. My question is, like, till what extent is the government watching our online activities?
Okay, since this session is recorded, I cannot comment on that.
Srikumar is asking, can a shift from Android to Apple reduce the cybersecurity threats, especially while engaging in online banking transactions?
See, both platforms are almost equal. The main differentiation between an Apple and Android is that Android, it's an open source. So it's an open source, and there are different versions which comes from that. And on a Google Marketplace, apps gets posted where without much of a security check, Whereas in Apple or App Store, it goes through a rigorous security testing, checking, and all those things before it gets posted there. So there is a big difference between these two. It's not like on Apple platform there is less number of attacks. There are attacks as well. Whether you are using Apple or Android, the basic thing is, if you don't apply the common sense and have these basic principles in place, it is not going to help. Like, you have the best car, like maybe a Ferrari or a Porsche, but if you drive, like I think in Oman you drive on the right side, right? On the right side of the road.
Yeah.
But if you still drive on the left side of the road against the traffic and thinking that your car is safe and all those things, it is not going to help. So I think we can take one more question before I jump on to my next session.
Oh yeah, actually there are two questions which are left, other ones are answered. I will read it together. One is from Nusrat Shaukat. What are some examples of cyber threat indicators that may be shared? And second, from Shicha Rajesh, how to remove malicious software from our device, the best options. With that, we can write that.
Okay, so the malicious software can be removed. There are different scanners available, free and paid. So you can choose from the paid versions as well, because paid versions are a little bit better because there is a lot of Q&A, which there is a lot of QA which goes into the product development, and there are people who are actually supporting that. It's not like free things are not safe. I'm not saying that. You can try and see which one makes a much better choice. I don't use any names, but you can use commercially available software for scanning and then fixing it. And what was the first question?
To give some examples of cyber threat indicators that may be shared.
Yeah, the cyber threat indicators I already mentioned in one of the slides. Like these are some of the indicators of compromise. So that is also applicable here. If you want, there is an excellent article on Wikipedia about indicators of compromise. So I would highly recommend anyone who is interested take a good read on that.
Thank you so much, sir, because more than the session, the Q&A was very, very useful. Elaborate, very patiently you answered each and every question without hesitating, actually. So it's very, very useful. That's the reason I was thinking more number of questions to come. Yes, from the audience, a good number of questions we got today. Thank you for your sparing your valuable time in the morning for you, early morning for you, and also sharing your experience. This is what, when we go for Q&A only, we can get your complete experience. Actually, this experience speaks.